Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Eat Like Ruby podcast. I am here today with a bit of a different guest. This is exciting. She's already giggling a lot. So, different guest because obviously we talk always about nutrition and training, and then any guest we get is pretty much specializing in some area of nutrition and training. Whereas our guest today is Riley May. So hello, Riley.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me, Ruth.
No worries. I'll let you intro yourself in a second. But really, Riles is here today for, I'd say, some like juicy mindset chats. And anytime I do mindset episodes, I usually do them solo and I just go for it.
It's just riffing.
Yeah. And I feel like so much of what I talk about with nutrition and training mindset, you talk about with like business and like mindset courses and things like that. And I feel like it's so applicable. And I think as we get into it today, it'll really piece together. But I also think too, obviously a lot of our listeners are here for the nutrition and training chat. But then I feel like we have a lot of online coaches and that sort of thing that listen as well. So I feel like this is just going to be juicy mindset for really anything, I'd say like limitations, blocks. Yeah, we're going to get into it, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself first.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Riley. I am a business coach and a mindset coach as well. I've been Rubes' coach for a couple of years.
Yeah, I was actually thinking on the way here, I feel like it was like all of 2022, 23, 24.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's almost, to the point now where I don't even know. We stopped counting after a couple of private containers. But I've been in the coaching world for around 5.5 years now, which is insane. Wow. I started out as a PT and that slowly moved into the online space and then mindset coaching, now business coaching, and I still do a lot of mindset. A lot of my focus really lies in intelligence, and that's for sure where I just love to be, and I love to help people in that way. And like Rube says, it really does go into every area of your life, and health and fitness, just coming from that background of working with so many women in that space and working with them, with their fitness and with their nutrition, but then just understanding and knowing how important mindset is when it comes to anything that you're applying in your health and fitness. That was sort of the segue for me moving solely into mindset, because I found that most of the conversations I were having with clients always came back to their mindset or whatever they were navigating on that level. So that's kind of been my journey.
Yeah, and I feel like I see that hugely in Eat Like Ruby, because obviously we do all the fun foods and the flexible dieting and all that stuff, and I feel like on the surface it's quite fun and people are excited to come in and whatever. And then when they come in, we really start to look at a lot of the mindset stuff and the underlying stuff, and I feel like that is such a game changer for people. I feel like awareness to so much of the underlying mindset shit that people aren't aware of is just like an absolute game changer. And I feel like that's something you do really well. Like you'll speak to things that I think most people have never thought about in their life. And I feel like I do that with people's nutrition and training. And then, like anytime I've heard you speak to something, I'm like, fuck, I watch people do this, but with their diet.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting to piece together. So I thought it'd be super cool to get you in today. And I feel like we've got to say, like, full disclosure, I messaged Riley yesterday morning and said,
we're just here.
Like, would you be interested on coming on my podcast? And she's like, I can do tomorrow.
And it's Rube's birthday.
Yeah, so today's my birthday. And I was
33.
just like, yeah, I guess. Like, we can do tomorrow. And then when she walked in today, I'm like, we have zero plan for this conversation. But
it's the best conversations, though.
I think so. And I think you're known for the Riley riff and I'm known for the Ruby riff. And I'm like,
it makes sense.
Together we're going to be fucking on one right now.
We're going to be riffing. Well, one thing I wanted to say on what you were just speaking to around almost giving context for the problem that people think they're experiencing, it's knowing that whatever problem you present with is always a symptom of the actual problem.
I love this. Can you just elaborate?
I absolutely will. So with this, it can be the same in business. It's the same with really anything that you're navigating in life, and health and fitness is going to be a huge one for this, where the problem may be, I just don't know, how to meal prep properly, or I don't know how to structure my routine so I can fit my 5 sessions in. That's a symptom of the actual problem. Because you do know how to meal prep and you do know how to fit 5 sessions in your week. If you were to sit down with your Google Calendar, you can make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone can do that. But the reason you're happy to identify with that problem is because, one, it's untrue. So there's no issue with you actually identifying with the problem because you know it's not really true. And then the actual problem is, fuck, if I actually put in the 5 sessions every single week and I had to do them, what would then happen on the other side of that? So maybe the underlying problem is actually, wow, I'm so afraid that if I do go to the gym 5 days a week for 10 weeks for the whole duration of the fat loss phase and I don't get results, I'm going to feel X way about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier for me to go to my coach and say, I don't know if I can schedule in the 5 sessions, because that's a really easy problem to identify with, instead of looking at the fact that, wow, I'm actually just terrified of applying myself to this thing, doing what's required of me, and then potentially not succeeding on the other side of that because I'm going to make it mean that I failed, and that's going to fucking suck.
I feel like that's huge. We could wrap up the episode there.
And we're done.
I feel like that is so true, though. And I feel like it's things like that I've heard you say things like that with just mindset in general or business. You know, we see people do like big cock blocks in business with things like that. And I feel like another, on a similar note, I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago in an episode with Shaq, what people feel comfortable identifying with or as compared to what they don't. And even a big one we see with nutrition is people like not tracking their food or not sticking to something and running with the story of, I'm a perfectionist and I can't do this perfectionly right now, so I won't do it at all. And a big thing we said on there was, I think we were saying along the lines of like, are you a perfectionist or a procrastinator? And do you feel better when you run with the perfectionist thing instead of like, no one wants to sit there and go, oh, I'm a procrastinator.
Yeah, because it's an identity thing. Who wants to identify with, you know, I'm lazy and I'm a procrastinator? No one. Like, no one wants to identify with that. Perfectionism is always going to be a scapegoat for procrastination. You know, it's a really easy mask in every area.
I'm just grinning because I'm loving it.
Where you might say, you know, oh, I'm just a perfectionist. So if, you know, I didn't, you know, adhere to my meal plan or my diet the entire week, and I get to Wednesday and I have an off day or an off meal, or I didn't track something, whatever, then I fucked my whole week and I'm going to start again Monday because I'm just a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm just a perfectionist, and it annoys me in my brain that the whole week is now off because I had one meal out, whatever the reason may be. If you actually take responsibility for the fact that procrastination is just a reactivity response, and what I mean by that is when your ego is challenged, and your ego is your self-concept, your self-image, you know, who you want to be, who you present as, the image that you want to essentially portray to other people, when that's being challenged. So let's just say you really, I want to use a very tangible example. Let's say you get a lot of love and attention for being the one that struggles. Right? So it's like you get a lot of love, a lot of validation, and a lot of attention when you struggle. Naturally, you're going to create an environment and create patterns and behaviors that support you being someone who struggles, and you're going to do anything in your power to continually repeat that pattern so you continue to get that validation, that love, or that acceptance. So come Wednesday, when you eat the off meal and all of a sudden it's like, I'm just a perfectionist, I can't do the thing, I've got to start again Monday. In that you get love, in that you get attention, in that you get the validation of, yes, try again next week, you'll be fine, you can do it, whatever else. And you low-key get off on that every single week, and that's the thing stopping you from achieving anything in your life. And it will go beyond your health and fitness, but it's probably playing out in your health and fitness.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's juicy as. And I feel like my mind went in so many directions there. I feel like you'll have so much to say. Things that I thought about when you said that is obviously a big thing I speak to with nutrition, and I know you speak to this hugely as well, is secondary gain. And I think what the way I see this play out hugely with nutrition is, on the surface, it's very like, even like you said, if someone, you know, falls off track on a Wednesday or Thursday or whatever. And I think a really common one is like, oh, my partner always wants to get takeaway. So it's like, oh, I was trying to do my thing and I was, you know, I'm the perfectionist, so I was ticking all the boxes, and then my partner got takeaway. And on the surface, it's very much like, poor me, I'm trying to do the right thing and he's walking in the door with takeaway. But then how convenient, because I got to have KFC for dinner.
Yeah, and it's from a reactivity perspective, well, you get to play the damsel.
Yeah, like it's
Right?
not my fault.
Yeah, well,
He
there's
got it.
nothing I could do. Like, he brought it home, and who am I to say no to the takeaway? And then it just perpetuates the same cycle. And in that, there's an element of like people pleasing. There's an element of not adhering to your own boundaries. There's an element of not wanting to be a pain or not wanting to, like, we could even speak to good girl conditioning in that.
Yeah, where
Right?
you don't want to like sort of step up and be like, well, no, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
I
hold
want to
your
be
own.
easy. I want to be easygoing. I want to be all these things. So it's like the minute someone asks me to the dinner, the birthday, the takeout, the night out, the whatever, I'm not someone who can say no.
Yeah.
That's also pretty convenient.
I was about to say how convenient.
Yeah, like that's also very convenient to stay stuck. And a lot of people will have that type of language. I'm just stuck. I'm just stagnant. I'm just stuck. I'm just stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
You're not stuck or stagnant. You're just repeating the same patterns because there's huge secondary gain and you're not moving beyond them.
Mic drop. Pausing for effect. That is so true. Yeah, I feel like that we could do like 10 episodes about exactly that.
Just a breakdown.
Literally. But I feel like another thing that you brought up in that previous chat was the like getting the love and the attention and everything when you struggle. And I think a massive thing for people to clock, and I often will bring this into the fat loss phase group every now and then, is are you seeking actual guidance and support, and do you want someone to actually help you and pull you forward, or are you seeking validation? Because I think like we see people come into the group that will say things like, oh, I even like you said before, it can be things like, I really struggle with meal prep, or I really struggle to get my steps. Anything that's like, that's not really a struggle. Like you said, you know how to meal prep, you know how to get steps, you know you could set the alarm half an hour earlier. And I'll preface, because we always say in Eat Like Ruby, like there's no right or wrong. If you want to get 4,000 steps, go off. But if you want to get 10 and you're saying, but poor me, I can only get 7. And then I feel like, coming back to what I was saying, it can be really common for people to come into a group scenario or anything like that and sort of be like, guys, I'm just really struggling because I really want to get 10, but I can only get 7. And it's sort of this big kind of pity party sob story. But are you wanting someone to actually come in and go, okay, cool, set your alarm half an hour earlier, get up, get 3,000 more?
Yeah.
Is that what you really want? Or are you wanting the 8 comments of people being like, oh, but good job for trying your best? And then, like you said, if you're getting that love and the attention, the validation and everything, while you're only getting the 7, probably really subconsciously for most people, why the fuck would you get 10?
Yeah, and then you don't have to move beyond the problem. This is the thing. It's like we're actually addicted. We're addicted to the patterns. We're addicted to the behavior because there's so much comfort in our limitations.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like to hear that or don't want to recognize that. But our limiting beliefs, whatever they are, and everyone's got their own conditioning and set of beliefs, but beliefs are BS and they're bullshit. Like your belief system is bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool thing to think about. So when
it's bullshit. How cool.
Bullshit. How cool to think about. But it's cool in the sense that if you think about everything that's stopping you from achieving any goal in your life right now, career, mindset, personal development, relationships, health, fitness, nutrition, fat loss, muscle gain, whatever. It's always going to come back to your mindset. Yeah. Every single thing. It's like 90% of the equation, because the execution is you just doing the thing, adhering to the thing.
Yeah.
You think anything that stops you beyond that, it really comes back to your mindset.
Yeah.
Every single time. So we put all this emphasis on, I just need the education.
Yeah.
I just need to be told. I just need XYZ question answered. If you focus more on becoming someone who achieved that outcome, you would achieve the outcome than focusing on how you're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Again, my mind is going to like a million different places. I think the first thing to think about there is like, it sounds so simple, but this is so common, is we see people, especially in the nutrition space, that are like, oh, I need the recipes. I need the dinner ideas. I need the meal plan. Literally type into Google dinner ideas. There you go. That's not the missing piece. So many people think, I need the subscription to the recipe service. I need the meal plans. Like, you could Google free meal plan. There's a reason that you don't, and there's a reason that you don't and you don't stick to it, especially because there's so much else happening. Like you were saying, it's all this mindset stuff and it's the belief stuff.
Yeah.
So on the surface, it's just like, oh, I just don't know what to have for tea. That is literally the least of your problems.
Yeah, it's untrue. You know, it's untrue because, again, it's so much easier if you're struggling to lose weight. We'll just use that example. If you're struggling to lose weight, it's so much easier to say it's because I don't have the meal plan. I don't understand, energy expenditure. I don't have the education. I don't have the training program. I don't have the time, than to say I don't actually think I'm worthy of losing 10 kilo.
Yeah.
Like that's hard to identify with.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do.
Why do you think people are like in that, so are you meaning like the sort of subconscious thing there is I don't think I'm worthy? Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I mean, there can be so many
like reasons. How much time do you have?
I'm like, there can be so many reasons, especially for women. Like if you think about weight gain and or just holding excess weight or putting on weight, whatever it may be, there's a lot of sort of protection in that, in a sense, right? So you may have gone through a trauma when you were young and you actually feel safer carrying weight because you feel like maybe you get less attention or you're safer in that body. Like there can be so many reasons. Of course, if you think about anything that comes alongside, EDs or disordered eating that you may have experienced in the past, do or struggle with, whatever, there's always going to be a huge mindset component to that. And there's going to be reasons that happens. There's also just stories around what people normalize. Like once you have kids, this is the body that you're stuck with. Or
or like if I do, I think a huge one I see is like, because I do night shift.
Night shift, shift work. It could even be,
I'm studying.
When you leave school, it's just what happens.
Yeah.
Or when you get married, it's just what happens. So there can obviously be big reasons, like I mentioned, around like disordered eating or trauma or things that you experience in terms of not feeling worthy. But then there can also be these reasons and things that are essentially just scapegoats for not changing. It's like, it just is what it is. And then it's like, wow, why are you so accepting of that?
Yeah.
Like, why so accepting of that just being the norm when if you spoke to this group of people, it's actually not the norm.
Yeah.
But who you surround yourself with or what you consume or what's normalized within your immediate circle it just is the way it is when maybe it's not.
Yeah.
So if you want to stop binge drinking on the weekend, maybe it's a better circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I spoke about this a while back, something that you speak about with the expectations of the peer group. We've spoken about this on the pod before about like if you're in that group, like you said, where the expectation is we just to get together every Saturday and get on the wines, or even I think a really common one is the work group, like, every day at work we all get takeaway or we all have the snack drawer or whatever. So if you're around that all the time and they're the most common people in your life and that's just what you're surrounded with all the time, like you're saying, you're normalizing like, we're just snackers or we just drink. Like, do you know what I mean? And it seems like such a surface level thing, like, we're just snackers. Like people don't think that much about it. But if you think about a person that goes to their job all day, every day and is also trying to achieve a fat loss goal or take their nutrition in a different direction, yet all day, every day, I'm surrounded by people that have normalized and are really comfortable identifying with, we just snack, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And if over here snacking is a big fucking clash with your goal, you're going to find yourself in a really shit situation.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly that. The most influential force is the collective expectation of your peer group.
Yeah.
Every single time. And if you think about that in any setting, it could be, career, business, health, fitness, whatever. It's always coming back to what's normalized. So if you think about relationships, for an example, if everyone's normalizing that your relationship turns to shit the minute you get married, that's probably going to be your reality and what you experience. If everyone's normalizing that it's really hard to adhere to a diet because on weekends it's normal to go out for every single meal and snacking is really common, like whatever the thing is, it's going to be really hard to adhere.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to, or, you take someone who's maybe struggled with alcohol or they are an alcoholic. Would you put them in an environment around 20 alcoholics to support them in no longer being one? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because that's challenging.
Yeah.
It's really
So
hard.
true.
So the same goes, there's going to be a level of sacrifice in anything that you're achieving. And if you think about anyone that has achieved any outcome, in any area, they will tell you that the sacrifice is probably who they were hanging around. And they'll tell you that there were people that probably couldn't come with them in that season, or they had to sacrifice X, Y, and Z. And a lot of people aren't willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, that is so true. And I feel like I mentioned the like peer group thing on the podcast maybe like about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and then it came up in the fat loss phase. Somebody said like, can you elaborate this on a bit more? And on one of the live calls, and I was saying to the girls in there, obviously you guys are, you're trying to prioritize your health and fitness wherever you're at in that journey. And if you feel like, again, your weekends are just piss ups and meals out and takeaway and we're hungover and all these things, you're going to find it really hard. And like you said, if you are scared to like break away from that, like I feel like there almost has to be the transition period where you are a little bit alone. And this is what I was saying to the girls in there. Yeah. If you want your weekends to be more like yoga classes and beach walks and mountain hikes and smoothies and whatever. And like, again, I always say, if you want your weekends to be piss ups and wine and cheese, like we're not shaming that. But if you're not happy with it and you're like, I want to break this cycle, whatever, at some point you have to initiate the breaking the cycle and know that it might mean that you go to the first yoga class by yourself and you go on the first beach walk by yourself, and maybe you spend a few weekends doing your own thing. But if you're going to that yoga class, for example, every Saturday morning, eventually that becomes your group. You start to chat to someone on the next mat, and then, at the smoothie bar, you become friendly with the girl or whatever. And then over time, that becomes your group. But if you're too scared to initiate that change and break away from the current group, that's never going to happen.
Ever.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to sit with, because a lot of the time you think about your norm and you're like, well, I kind of like my norm and I like my week when I
and
like
also
all
like,
stuff.
some people are just like, do I just tell my friends to fuck off?
Well, there's also that.
And it's a weird thing.
When your friends say to you like, hey, we're going out Saturday night and we're doing X, Y, and Z and we're going to have a few drinks here and then grab dinner at this Italian, and then who knows, we might go out after. You might be like, damn, I want to go, because that sounds good. You can. But what you're going to do instead is the next morning at 6 a.m., you've got someone that you're going for a walk with. So it's like, hey, for the next 10 weeks, I'm focused on this goal. Let's catch up in the mornings and go for a walk and coffee, instead of it being an espresso martini at 6 p.m., not 6 a.m. Yeah. So it's just like subbing out things, but then going out, and can you just not drink? Can you just not eat what everyone else is eating? I know Lil, one of my good friends, right? Yeah. She's a bodybuilder, always like, going through seasons of long prep and whatnot.
She's low key on my podcast list.
She'll be on. She'll be on the body. But for Lil, like we, would go out like over summer, or we would go to Wildlands at New Year's and do all these things. We were going out for dinners all the time and staying together for 4 or 5 days. And she's right in the trenches of prep. And she's got her meals there every single time. She's doing her thing.
Yeah.
Not once did she go outside of that. It'd be 8 o'clock at night and she'd be staying at my house with a couple of people, and she'd be like, shit, I've got like 3,000 steps left. And then we would grab the skateboards and like walk around the streets until she was done. But, there's always going to be a way around it. And if you want to, you will.
Yeah.
And I think it's realizing that, and it can be a hard thing to actually sit with, but your results will reflect how badly you want it in any area.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting results, how badly do you really want it?
Love it.
Well, it's just true though. It's just, and again, it can be hard to hear, but even you speaking before, it made me think about something I always say to myself, to clients, and I speak about it often, is at some point you have to participate in your own rescue.
Yeah.
You just have to. And a lot of people are waiting for someone external of them to save them. They're waiting for something external of them to save them. Yeah. And it's like, when you realize nothing and no one is coming to save me, it's actually, it's a me job, and it's an internal job. And all this is going to be is me waking up one day and deciding enough is enough. And I'm willing and ready to participate in my own rescue, which means I'm going to do what's required.
Yeah, I love this so much. And I feel like one thing that keeps coming to my mind on a few topics, and here as well, I think it's so common. I've said this on the podcast before, but I feel like it's so common for people to be in a position right now that they maybe don't love being in, or they've got goals or whatever, and that's awesome. And have this vision in their mind of like, well, one day life will look like X, Y, Z. And this can be obviously health and fitness, but I think people do it hugely with like finances, retirement, things like that as well. Like one day I'll get over here. And really actually thinking, am I moving in that direction? Am I doing the shit that's required every day? I think the grand like result is exciting when you look, okay, well, I'm over here and eventually one day I'll be over here and maybe I'll be shredded or I'll be rich or I'll be whatever it is. But the shit that is required to actually become that thing on a daily basis isn't so grand, isn't so exciting. It's actually changing your, like you're saying, mindset, beliefs, but also actions and things you're doing. And I think a lot of people aren't actually getting up on a daily basis and moving in that direction, but they're sort of holding this pedestal like, well, one day I'll get there. And it's like, but when and how?
Well, it's sort of like when you're casting your vision to be like, in 6 months, I'll be at X weight. In 6 months, I'll be at this goal. In 12 months, I'll be at this goal. Time is sort of an illusion and doesn't exist. So what happens on almost like a mental level is that 6 months just keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah.
Like you never actually reach it. It's just always 6 months away.
Yeah.
Then a week passes and it's still in 6 months. Then a month passes and it's still in 6 months. And then you realize that this 6 month goal has just been a 6 month goal for 3-4 years. And you never actually got there.
Yeah. This is so true.
So you do have to think like, where do I want to be in 6 months? Perfect. But then reverse engineer.
Guys, how often do I drop the reverse engineer term? Here it is.
This is where it stems from. But you do have to reverse engineer. Like, what is required of me day to day? It's not glamorous. It's not fun. Think about building a business. You know, we talk about this often in mentorship, but you're just in front of a laptop all day.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you're doing all day, every day for 5 years. And on the outside, it looks like, oh my God, you're earning all this money.
Take
and you're
pictures
having
of your
all this
lunch
success.
every day.
Yeah, it's like, don't get it twisted. All I do is tap away at this thing, right? And it's perfect and it's fine, but that's what's required. So this is why, you know, for me, when it comes to business and the coaching that I do, I always speak about who over how. Because if you want to be someone who's earning 7 figures a year, for an example, you have to embody and become the version of you who earns 7 figures a year. If you want to be someone who is the fittest version of yourself, the healthiest version, disciplined, XYZ, name your thing, focus on becoming that.
Yeah.
You know, asking yourself how. That's when your goal just gets pushed back 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. Because it's always looking for an answer and a solution external of yourself.
Yeah.
It's like participating in your own rescue means I'm committed to becoming the person who loses 10 kilo. I'm committed to becoming the person who wakes up at 5 a.m. I'm committed to becoming the person who doesn't need to always go in and out of, you know, losing weight, gaining weight because I'm just a fit and healthy person.
Yeah.
If you focus on who, the results just come because, oh, well, I probably wake up at 5. Oh, well, I probably get 10,000 steps a day. Oh, well, I probably say no to, you know, going out every weekend. Oh, I probably don't do that anymore. Oh, shit, I got the result.
Oh, shit, there it is.
Oh, shit, there it is. It's happening. You know, but and also, like, people love to make things harder than it needs to be because if it's hard, there's a reason to not change.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And one thing you nail in business and you nail it in your programs and you nail it with clients.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. I don't know if you mean like universe.
I know, you specifically. If you think about what you've created in the fat loss phase and what you've created for clients and why you get such incredible results, is complexity hinders follow through. Right? So the more complex something is, the less likely someone is to follow through.
Yeah.
With anything.
Yeah.
And because your approach and how you speak to the topic of fat loss and how you program it and everything and how you educate around it is so simple. Like it's just facts.
Yeah.
This is how it is. People can follow through.
Yeah. Because there's no thing to be like, oh, I can't because of this. Yeah.
So then what's going to be really interesting, and you might feel personally attacked listening to this.
Me or them?
No, them. So I don't mean to do it in that way. But what I will say on that is watch where you try and, you know, if you're in the fat loss phase, for an example, watch where you go to overcomplicate it to have a reason to not change.
No, say it louder.
But it's what Rubes has delivered is like, it's foolproof. Like, what you get to do with the resources that you have and the tools and just the way it's structured is really foolproof. But what then happens is it's like, wow, this is so easy and simple, and not easy in terms of nothing's required. Like, you have to show up, you've got to do the work, you've got to do all the things, but it's easy in terms of like, here's what to do.
Yep.
Watch where you go to overcomplicate it. But there's this, and then there's this, and then there's that reason, and then there's this reason. Then I was tired, then I was hangry, and then I was this, and then I got busy that day. Yeah. It's like, oh, interesting. I can see where I'm creating chaos, because in chaos I actually feel quite comfortable and I don't have to move beyond the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, we don't talk about the business side of Eat Like Ruby too much on the podcast, because obviously everyone wants the fat loss talk.
Yeah, no one cares.
Literally. But that's an interesting thing that I come back to all the time, because obviously we get a lot of people in the fat loss phase, and every round I'm always looking at like, okay, what are we delivering? Is there anything that I want to change, refine, improve, whatever? And especially as you go through a round, you know, if things come up where you're like, oh, that would be great to speak to before the question comes up, how do we have a resource on that, etc. So you're constantly going through that process as the business owner. And when you have a round with 100 people in it, I'm very mindful of the fact that we're not going to go 0 for 100 in terms of results. There's going to be someone in there that doesn't get a result. And that can be hard as a business owner, because you're like, fuck, what do we do to help that person? And the thing that I've really landed in recently and come back to is looking at the fact that so many people do get results and thinking, okay, well, if you've all done the same program, why are you getting results and you're not?
Yeah.
And while, like I said, I'll look at every round and be like, okay, cool, like, let's give them this info a little bit earlier. Let's detail that a little bit more. Like, you can always refine. But I think for me, it was really important to look and go, is it me? Like, is it something I'm doing? Or like you said, is it actually on that person?
Yeah. Well, even from my perspective at the moment, so in the last 6 years, I would say I've never lost or gained weight. You know, I've always kind of stuck around like a 2 kilo kind of buffer, as everyone does. And then at the end of last year, I lost a lot of weight really quickly. I lost around 8 kilos, like very, very fast. And in that time, I've gained quite a lot of weight back, if not more. So now I'm in a season of being like, okay, adherence is exactly what's required of me, right? If I want to get back to X weight, X goal, X fitness level, whatever, I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z. So if you think about someone not getting results or getting results, that's only within your control as much as it's within your control, because I can follow a plan, right? I could be in the fat loss phase and you could give me every tool, every resource right now where I'm like, I just want to lose like the 3 kilos or the 4 kilos or the whatever. But if I don't adhere to what it is you're giving me, there's never going to be a result, but also that's not within your control.
Yeah.
So I know we speak to that often as well, like who you're attracting into, you know, different spaces, and that there is always going to be that percentage that don't. But with the way you do things and how you've always led in your business and your coaching, you can go to sleep at night knowing it's not on you.
Yeah.
Because the responsibility can only be on you to a certain point.
Yeah.
Then the client has to take responsibility for, well, yeah, like this is on me. No one else is getting me out of bed at 5 a.m. Like no one else is going to eat the food. And, you know, I'm going through that now where I'm like, well, yeah, what's it going to be and what's required of me? So that's my process, the same way it's a client's process.
Yeah, for sure. And I always say that to the girls who are killing it, because the girls that get the wicked results and then they're like, oh my God, Ruby, you've changed my life and the fat loss phase and all this stuff. And I've said a million times to people, like, because they'll be like, thank you. And I'm like, no, thank you, because the best coach or program in the world means nothing if you don't stick to it. Like literally the best meal plan coach program. And I think if people really let their ego go and really took that in for a second, like literally we could give you the greatest fucking meal plan you've ever had in your life. It's 100% up to you to stick to it. Like that's all there is to it. And if you're someone who thinks, yeah, and I probably wouldn't after 4 or 5 days, whose fault is that? Honestly, if we want to say it that harshly, like whose fault is that? And I think another thing to look at there, something I often think about, obviously like different coaches, different programs, people are just going to vibe and resonate with different things. And I'm so fine with that. That's something we've spoken about a lot, is like, I am the way that I am. And if somebody heard me and was like, Rubes is fucking too much or whatever, I would actually be like, that's perfect. I hope you find the coach that suits you.
Yeah.
Because if someone was really soppy and fluffy and like, you know, I need Rubes to cheer for me for getting out of bed. Whereas I'm like, bitch, get the fuck up and get to the gym.
Yeah, like it's go time.
We're going to have a big disconnect. So I would actually rather people know that and be like, oh, okay, Rubes isn't for me. I'm going to find the coach that is patting me on the back for getting out of bed. Like, that's perfect. So I think a thing for people to think about is that there's that element there. But if you've gone through several coaches, several programs, and you're constantly like, no, that one didn't work, what's next? No, that one didn't work, what's next? At some point, again, you've got to say, like, whose fault is this?
Yeah, and where am I not willing to participate in my own rescue? It always comes back to that.
Yeah.
It's just a willingness. If you want something, you will 1000% make it happen.
Yeah.
You'll make it happen.
Yeah.
And you'll do that by looking beyond what the problem is that you think the problem is, right? So it's like you'll look beyond it. If you notice a pattern is how common, I get to week 3 and then I just fall off track, or I get to week 2 and then something happened and then I just never showed up again.
Yeah. I feel like when the hype and the excitement's gone, and it's like, now I just have to actually get up every day and go to the gym and eat the food.
On that, right? It's like excitement is dysregulation.
Yeah.
Right? When you're excited, you're actually not regulated. So you're in a heightened state, which is not wrong or bad, but it's the same way anger, sadness, anxiousness, whatever else is also dysregulation. Mm-hmm. So either end of the pendulum is actually dysregulation. A lot of people struggle to show up when they're just neutral. Mm-hmm. Like nothing is good, bad, positive or negative.
Yeah, nothing to sort of like happening there. You're just like, I just get up and tick the boxes.
Yeah.
That's quite
let it be
boring.
boring. Let it be boring. It's same with business. You know, we have this conversation often, but it's like how often people go to make a boring season wrong because they are addicted to chaos or feeling dysregulated. If it's not exciting, I can't move. If it's not, like riddled in anxiety, I can't move. If I'm not X, Y, and Z. And again, nothing is wrong or bad. Like everyone's going to feel the full spectrum of emotions, but can you operate and continually pursue your goals when nothing is good or bad? It just is.
Yeah.
Just is.
And you just get up and go.
And a lot of people can't.
Yeah.
Because, and again, it's a lot of the time it's unconscious. So it's not your fault that you can't, but you have to have awareness of that.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I notice that I only want to do things when I'm excited. I notice that motivated. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
how often do I remember it and I, think I'm just not motivated. It's like, well, neither. Like, neither, business even. It's like, I'm not motivated today. Who is motivated? It's a temporary feeling and that's perfect. But if you're relying on temporary feelings to be the thing to get you to your goal.
Yeah.
It's incremental shifts over a very long period that are probably not going to get you there.
Yeah.
Like, how often do you really feel motivated?
Yeah.
I don't feel motivated that often. When I think about it, I'm not like, wow, I'm so motivated. It's like I've got more energy sometimes and then less energy other times. And I want to go more other times and I don't want to go other times. But the common thing is it's just ticking boxes and it's just doing things.
And like almost coming back to like what you said, ticking boxes of what's required to be the person that you want to be.
Yeah. And you're not always going to want to do that. Like, do you want to meal prep on a Sunday? Sometimes not, but sometimes yes. But on the weeks that you can't be bothered, it's doing it anyway and strengthening the trust that you have with yourself. That's a massive thing that impacts people. They just lack a lot of self-trust because they do fall into the trap of making things really complex and then lacking follow through.
Yeah.
And when you lack follow through,
I just can't stick to things.
Yeah, I'm just someone who can't stick to things, or I always start but I can't finish. But it's like, wow, you've just collected so much evidence to support that belief that you're not someone who can follow through and you're not someone who's your word. And that's contributing to, why you feel like you can't do something. It's almost like when you're counting reps. If you have to do 3 sets of 10, you'll just go to 10 and 7, 8, 9 will feel really hard. If you've got to go to 15, like 12, 13, 14, 15 feels hard.
Yeah.
But you can do the extra reps, right? So it's like random. Why did 7 not feel so hard anymore? Like,
yeah, that's so
because
true.
you change the goal
Yeah.
and you change the goalpost. So it's like with the fat loss phase, for example, if you're someone who's like, well, I can only ever get to week 2, change that minimum. Like change your threshold of that and being like, well, I can't get to 4 months, but I could absolutely do 3 months.
Yeah.
You'd probably do it.
Yeah.
You know, you'd probably do it. It's just the association that you have to things and what you've normalized for yourself.
Yeah. And then just running with the story.
Yeah.
Which, like, we know is such a huge thing.
Yeah, 1,000%. And even food, like this is a little bit of a different topic and conversation, but food can be something as well that's very soothing. You know, when you have any discomfort come up, whether it's anger, sadness, anxiousness, whatever, you're moving through things. Food's a huge comfort for people.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this myself where you're going through a hard season and you're like, well, food feels like something that would be comfortable right now because you get to suppress a lot of whatever you're experiencing with that.
Yeah.
So when you are going through, you know, a fat loss phase or you're pursuing a goal and you are going through a lot of discomfort, you know, in your life or in the goal itself or with a relationship, you go to kind of snack or you just go to grab something.
Yeah.
And having, you know, intelligence, being able to access that is just going, wait a minute.
Does that serve me right now? Does that make sense?
And why?
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing that?
Yeah.
And just getting curious and going, wow, what I actually need right now is to go outside in the sun for 20 and just regulate myself. I actually don't need a snack. I'm not even hungry. Like half the time you're full, you know, but you're like, oh, I'm just going to go eat something. So I think too, it's just it's a all over awareness thing of just getting curious around what you think the problem is and actually asking yourself, what's the actual problem?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's huge. And with the snacking thing, I feel like it's kind of on the same topic. We spoke about this, it's probably actually a while ago now, but we did a Q&A and someone said how to stop snacking at night or how to stop wanting something sweet at night or something like that. And I was saying on that episode, I personally think that, like similar to what you said, I don't think that's a lot to do with food. I think if you think about a person who is going through their day and maybe they don't have a lot of fulfillment, like that's the direction I took it in that episode. Like to me, there's a bit of a lack of fulfillment there because you're almost getting to the nighttime and not being able to just be, like you said before, neutral and just be like, I'm done. And you're almost kind of like looking for something else. Like you can't just switch off and chill. You're like, I need something more. And for a lot of people, I think it's a big lack of fulfillment in maybe other areas of your life. And you're not going to solve that problem in your kitchen at 7:30 at night. Yeah. So you're like, okay, temporary fix, a Tim Tam, or do you know what I mean?
It's a dopamine hit also.
Yeah,
because food does give you that dopamine hit. I mean, it's a silly example, but I've been doing a gut cleanse for the last month because I was living in Bali and parasites and just all the things. But in that, I haven't had any like refined sugar or no
Nutella?
Dairy, no Nutella, off brand. It's not on brand. But it's been interesting because I obviously haven't had that same hit from food that you typically get when you are consuming, you know, foods that are higher in sugar and things like that. And it's interesting how much I don't go for it now and I don't think about it and I don't want it anymore. So I think even sometimes your diet can reflect that, where it doesn't matter if you're fitting in whatever, you know, you're fitting in within your macros and your calories and things like that. But it's also getting really curious around like, wow, where am I contributing to the problem that I'm experiencing? If I have a square of chocolate, I want 5 more.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not a wrong or bad thing. But if you know you're someone that tends to do that, where you have one Tim Tam, but you're like, oh, I'd love another couple, or I'd love a bit more, then it's maybe just subbing it out and going, do I need the Tim Tam at all? Like, do I need it at all today? Maybe I don't. And just challenging it because, again, we kind of normalize it. Yeah. Where if you love having it, you get to have it. But maybe you just don't need it at all. Yeah. You know, I even noticed living overseas, because I was in Bali for a couple of months for context, and just to speak to what you were saying around the nighttime thing, I had a lot more space in my day. Like I wasn't as busy. You know, we had housekeepers and like you didn't
living the dream.
I was living the dream. Like I didn't cook. Like you don't clean. You don't do anything. So you got a lot of space in your day. And I would occupy that with eating. Yeah. Because I was almost looking for
what's next?
Yeah, something to do and a bit of a dopamine hit and all the different things. So it is really interesting to notice your behavior around food dependent on your lifestyle, your fulfillment, who you're around, you know, how busy you are, how occupied you are. Yeah. After dinner, could you go for a 20-minute walk and just see how you feel?
Yeah. And I think like so much comes to my mind there because G and I actually spoke about that a few weeks ago where I was saying like I personally love going into my fat loss phase and limiting my food. And like for me, I kind of like low key love the challenge, but I also love like being able to work and not have to stop and eat.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really interesting because I think I said in that episode, when people don't love their job and they don't get a lot of fulfillment for their job, I know a lot of people that I've coached over the years or I've worked at places back in the day where you're almost just like, when's morning tea? When's lunch?
1,000%.
What are we having for
Think
afternoon
about
tea?
school.
Yeah.
School, that's all I wanted to do. It was like, let's
when
get to lunch.
we hit the tuck shop.
Yeah.
But I feel like the big underlying thing there is like nothing to do and nothing to like fulfill, like to get your fulfillment in other ways. Because a perfect example I used on that episode as well is I reckon a lot of people can relate to that with their work, but then at the same time having days around their house or something where like, you know, when you're like doing your yard or you're painting your house or something and then you get to the night and you're like, fuck, I haven't eaten all day. And I think that's just a cool thing to clock because I think for people it's like because you had something to do. Like there was something else to put your energy and time and everything into.
Yeah.
So when people are sort of like, oh, like how do I stop snacking? I just think like, does the energy and stuff need to go somewhere else? And to even like almost backflip on that, I said to one of the girls in the fat loss phase, that's a cool thing to think about. Like if I am snacking at night, do I find something else to do instead? And in my opinion, I'd love to know your opinion on this. The next level is, can there be nothing? Can
you sit?
Can I actually just be like, I'd love a snack, but I'm not going to have one, and I don't have to fucking start coloring in or playing on my phone,
Distracting myself.
Yeah,
Well,
like can I actually sit in the like you could call it discomfort, or you could just be like, what's presenting is I'd fucking love some chocolate, and like we know, flexible dieting, eat it, do whatever, but it's more so, in my opinion, that's the ultimate place to get to is just being able to say, yeah, I'd love that, but also I can sit here without it.
This is, you know, I would say that I've always had a fairly good relationship with food, and I'm very fortunate and grateful for that because I think a lot of people don't get through their life without having a period of feeling like, no, I definitely struggled with disordered eating or whatever, especially women.
Yeah.
Especially women. So hearing you and all of that, but I think what's really important for me around food and how I'm able to even do things like this gut cleanse where it really cuts out everything. Like I'm not allowed fruit. I'm not allowed, like I can have berries. Yeah. But it's no dairy. It's no sugar. It's no grain.
You know you're going to get all these DMs. It's like, what's this gut cleanse?
No one needs to gut cleanse. It's parasite things. But it's literally just to get rid of parasites, right? But it's very strict in that sense. And I'm not allowed to eat like even sweet potato, like under the ground veggies. So it's limited. I'm eating steak and eggs most days, really. Like is what I'm eating. And probably 2 meals a day. The reason that's fine for me to do and I can go from kind of eating whatever I want to doing that quite quickly is because I've never said to myself, I'm not allowed a food. Right? So it's almost that feeling of, and I know a lot of people experience this, when you've got all these rules around food, it's something from a mindset perspective where you're in scarcity, and when you're in scarcity and lack, you hold on to things really tightly. Yeah. And you don't want to let go of the thing because it's like, but if I let go, it's gone forever. Yeah. And if I let go, I'm never going to get it back. If you're allowed chocolate any time of the day, as much as you want, like from 5 a.m. till 12 p.m., like whatever, you'll just all of a sudden just let that block sit there.
Yeah. And this is huge for me where people are like, how do you have Nutella in your house? And not spoon it from the jar.
You can eat
whatever.
It anytime you want.
And I'm like, I've literally had Nutella on my breakfast every single day for the last 8 years. To me, I don't think twice about that jar any other time. And I don't want to disrespect the people that are in the thick of eating disorders and whatever, because I know that can be such a struggle for people. But for me, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, it's almost like when people talk about like exposure therapy and stuff. Yes. It's just like you said, the scarcity element is removed. And I think that's a game changer. We talk about this in the fat loss phase. We do a specific week on enjoying meals out and about eating out. And I think when you look at a person who is trying to implement a really restrictive diet and not enjoying it, like feeling like I should, eat good and cut this out, and it's quite a negative experience. I think if you spend all week doing that and then you find yourself in a restaurant or something on Saturday night and they put hot chips on the table, you're just in that like dog off a leash, fucking kid at a birthday party energy when you're fucking hot chips. And then I think it's almost like that back and forth. I shouldn't, nah, fuck it, I want to, I shouldn't, I should, whatever. And we speak about this so much in the fat loss phase because I intentionally speak to enjoying meals out, because when you think about this experience, that's pretty quickly becomes unenjoyable for a person.
Well, you're in a shame pit after.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, you're in a shame pit.
You're in a like, should I, shouldn't I thing for ages. Yeah. And then most people give in, do it. And then like you said, it's that shame. For some people that can then snowball into a whole eating episode. And like there's so many directions that can go. But what I speak to with the girls in the fat loss phase with flexible dieting and everything is, imagine if 2 or 3 nights a week you literally had like oven fries in your air fryer, right? And then you just normalize the hot chips. And I'm never going to sit here and be like, you know, try and pretend like hot chips aren't fucking delicious. That's not what I'm getting at. Literally.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in that restrictive diet thing, anything like you're saying is just held up on this pedestal. And the second that you're in a position where you can have it, or like it's sitting in front of you, it is that like, oh my God, I don't normally have this thing, I'm going to fucking go crazy. Whereas when you can implement that flexible and that moderation and all the things you're talking about, still like you can still sit there and be like, oh fuck, hot chips, I'd love some of them, and you know maybe I shouldn't have too many, and there can still be that element, absolutely, but that's a very different mindset compared to a person that's like, fuck, I said I was never going to eat these, now I am. And then people almost do that like, oh, have as much as I can right now because starting next week I'm never going to have them again. And it's like, how many times do you go through that
that's just
cycle?
A weekly thing.
Yeah. And it really comes back to that whole like, I'm never eating these again. The second it's sitting 1 foot away from you, just like an open fucking plate, big problems kick in.
And it's just allowing everything to be neutral.
Yeah.
Like looking at an apple the same way you'd look at a pear, the same way you'd look at a tomato, the hot chips, the Tim Tam, the Nutella, the whatever. It just is.
Yeah.
Like it just is. All of it just is. You would never wake up and go, you're not eating an apple today. But you're likely not going to have an apple anyway.
Yeah.
You know, if you just don't want an apple, you just won't eat an apple.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so interesting how we go, I'm not having the Tim Tam today. But the more you think about something, the more you'll start to see it, think about it, attract it, then be tempted by it, all the things. It's, just getting to a place of neutrality around it. And also I think a big thing with any goal when it comes to weight loss or fat loss, especially around nutrition and food, is find your why, but also the value. Because for me, if I think about food, I really value how food makes me feel. So I never look at it as, will I lose or gain weight eating this food? I think, how am I going to feel? Yeah. Like, will I feel crampy after? Will I have bad digestion? Will I get a fucking ripping headache and just feel shit? Like, you know, whatever it is. And that's enough. Like that for me is, it outweighs however good the food is. Yeah. Like if I'm like, oh, Tim Tams are so good, but oh my God, my gut, my this, my headache, like I'm going to be hungrier. Then that's an easy no for me. Yeah. Just by choice. It could be the same with an onion, right? Like if I eat onion and I'm like, God, onion makes me feel so bad. Yeah. Then I'm just not going to eat onion. Yeah. But if I eat the onion, I will know what I'm choosing. Yeah. Right? So I'll eat it and I'll go, well, I'm probably going to feel a bit bloated, probably going to feel a bit shit, but that's whatever because I'm choosing it. Same with hot chips. Love hot chips. I feel like shit. But if I want the hot chips, I'm just like, okay, I know that I'm also choosing to feel like shit. Yeah. And that's fine. Because I'm just like, I'm just choosing to feel like shit. Yeah. But it's like, if I have that dialogue, then I know what I'm choosing. Yeah. And I think that's what's really important to come back to is like, know the choice you're making. Yeah. If you're choosing to have the chocolate, that is perfect. Yeah. But just know what you're choosing.
And this is huge. Like we speak to this so much in the eating out time in the fat loss phase as well, because there's such a big difference. If you think about a person in that hot chip scenario, if you're like, say if you're like, no, I'm going out tonight and I'm only getting a salad and everyone's fucking getting pizza and chips and whatever. And then you end up like, quote, giving in, having the thing. Like you said, big shame pit, big everything. We go home, a lot of regret, a lot of guilt, very shitty feeling. If a person is very educated and understanding and makes a conscious decision before they go out of like, tonight I'm going to like enjoy 2 pieces of pizza and some hot chips. When you come home, in both of those scenarios, the actual food intake, the food consumed and the nutrition intake was the same. But in one situation, it was, I wasn't going to do that. I did, and now I feel like shit. In the other situation, it was, that was a conscious choice and I followed through on it.
Yes.
Very, very big difference in the mindset of these people. And like you're saying, it really comes back to the control and the awareness and feeling like I was in control of that. I made the decision, etc. Very, very different position for people to be in.
Yeah. And a lot of it is education around food as well. You know, how common is it? Like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Like, it's not. You know what I mean?
Well, I said on here the other day, like I hardly ever eat breakfast.
I never
just
eat
love
breakfast.
to eat later in the day.
Completely. But for years, I was like,
I have no breakfast.
I would eat the biggest breakfast. You know, I'd eat so much food. And again, if you love eating food the minute you wake up, perfect.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Breakfast is break fast. Right? That's the word.
So break it whatever time you want.
Break it whenever you want to break it. You know, if you like breaking it at 12 o'clock, perfect. If that feels good for you, it's just really dissolving all of the rules. I think that's a really big thing around food. And it's sad how much like bullshit we're fed our whole lives around food, because there's so much undoing in that, so much conditioning in that. You know, for me, I eat 2 meals a day. I probably start eating around 10:30, 11. I'll eat another meal around 5. I'll definitely have something in between. And I'll probably have like, I don't know, some yogurt berries or whatever, ice cream for dinner. I mean, for dessert.
For dinner.
For dinner? Well, I can if I want to.
But no rules.
Yeah, but that's sort of my day, and that feels really good for me.
Yeah.
And even when I eat a meal, sometimes it is just a steak and 3 eggs. And there's nothing else to it. But then for lunch, it might be like a heap of veggies and some chicken. And then I have like some, I don't know, sauerkraut beforehand, whatever. But again, I remember a time where I would have thought like, well, that's not a proper meal.
Yeah.
But it actually is. And there's just so much rules. There's so many rules. And I think that's probably the hardest part that you might find with clients, but what people navigate when it comes to, you know, weight loss and just navigating their food, because everything you look at, you're looking at it through such a critical lens.
Yeah.
And you're making it wrong or right or this or that or trying to follow all this stuff. If you just come back to, when do I actually want to eat today?
Yeah.
And what do I want to eat? And how does that fit into my macros? And does that feel good for me? And am I hitting my protein? And am I doing all these things? You're going to feel amazing. And if you come back to feeling, I think anything to adhere to is so much easier, because you feel so good, and naturally you go, well, I feel good, so I may as well just keep going.
Yeah.
Like, if I feel this good, why would I not?
Yeah. And that's even one thing I say to my girls as well, especially if they're eating out or even when they're sick. A big thing that comes up when people are sick is like, should I change my plan, or if my appetite's gone, or if I'm moving less or whatever. Like, people have a lot of questions when they're sick. And I always say to people, like, you know, there's certain things you might want to look at or whatever, but if nothing else, literally come back to what would make me feel good today.
Yeah.
Because and same thing when you're eating out. Like, if you're eating out and you're like, oh, I don't know exactly how much and what to say yes and what to say no, I would argue that every person can answer that question. You know where the line is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you know, some people, I think this almost comes full circle back to the perfectionist thing. People will be like, oh, I'm sick. I can't eat perfectly, so I just snacked on fucking chips all day. And then I always say to people, like, really catch yourself in that. And you don't have to hit targets. You don't have to do whatever. Like, meet yourself where you're at if you're actually sick, but clock the difference between like what would make me feel good versus, oh, well, I can't do it perfectly, so I'll just do whatever, but I'm sick, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's having that excuse as well.
Yeah.
It's like, just let it be. And I think the feeling thing is just massive with everything.
Yeah.
Do I feel good? Do I feel good? And then you just have your answer.
Yeah.
Because you might even think, I think with food as well, and like food that we deem bad or negative, you might feel like you love chocolate or you love chips or lollies, or like, name your thing. Everyone's got their thing. But then you ask yourself, do I really love this thing, or do I just love it because like I'm not supposed to have it?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Do I love it just because it's like anything? You could think about this in dating. You could think about this in business. You could think about it in life relationships. It literally applies to anything. You always want the thing that doesn't want you.
It's like a dating thing.
Yeah, it's like a dating thing. You want the thing that doesn't want you, but that's how humans like behave. You know what I mean? This is like a whole another conversation, which I won't even go into, but it's how we behave. So it's like when two things want each other, there's actually not as much pull there, because sometimes it's not as exciting. It's not as like I'm breaking rules, or I'm doing this or I'm doing that. So it's not as attractive anymore, and it's not as exciting anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, if you can just eat chocolate any time of the day, it wants you, you want it. It's like, oh, like, I'll just eat it when I can be bothered. I'll just like grab some when I feel like it. And then you might not feel like it for 5 days.
Yeah.
And then you might feel like it every day for 3 days. And then you might not want it again. But if it's this thing that's like back of the fridge, you're hiding, you're not allowed it, you can't wait to eat it. Oh my God, I shouldn't have it, but I can.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that is actually sometimes what you're addicted to more than the chocolate itself.
Yeah. And I feel like that almost ties in with what you're saying before about excitement being the dysregulation. If you can get to the point of being neutral and then therefore, like you're saying, sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't, that, like, to me, that's the ultimate. And that's where I would say I'm very much at with my food. I'd say you're in a similar position.
Yeah.
And if someone has had like a really shitty history and conditioning and everything with dieting, that can take a long time to get to, but that almost comes full circle. And I said this in an episode a few weeks ago. At what point do you say, okay, yes, maybe my mum set a really shitty example with dieting and that's all I've ever known. I've got a lot of conditioning. I've got a lot of history. I've got all these things. At what point do you go, okay, that's the way it was. I am actively intercepting that and I'm going to start changing it.
Yeah.
And that almost comes back to everything we've just spoken about, where I said it in that episode as well, where on the surface it can be like, poor me, this is the way it's always been. I've had such shitty conditioning and history and examples set for me and whatever. How convenient, because I get to hang out in that energy and keep playing the damsel, like you said, and I don't actually have to. It's a big thing to intercept that and go, this is no longer serving for me. I am going to choose differently, and it's going to take a bit of work. I'm really going to have to actively move in another direction. There's that big element there where people think, fuck, I'd love to do that. But actually, would I? Because fuck, that's hard.
Well,
and it comes back to the convenience and the comfort and the secondary gain and the damsel.
It's like we see, it's so fucked to see. Like it really is, and I'll preface that it is so hard to sit with yourself and go, I fucking love the problems I have. I love them. I'm addicted to them. I love telling the story. I love having the struggle. And this is so beyond even food. This is anything
that's
in your
what I was
life.
going to say. Like, I've come to you and said to that and said things like that. Like, I, low key, I said to you the other day, I low key love finding a really random fucking small problem that's going to take me all day to fix. Yeah. Because I don't have to look at big shit then.
And it was so interesting in that when you were like, I'm distracting myself. I can see that I'm just like distracting myself. And then what we got to in that.
Yeah. Was nothing to do.
No one would ever believe like what it even was. And it was to do with like, just stuff so unrelated.
Yeah.
And that's why it's almost funny. And I do it with myself too, where I'm like, okay, if I go, oh, I just don't have time. I go, okay, cool. So what is it? Like, what is it actually? If I think
I don't have time because I live by myself, I work for myself, I don't have kids,
I'm
but
not
I don't
looking
have
after anyone, but I just don't have time. It's like, okay, cool. So it's not that. Like, what is it actually? And then you get curious around it. So same with food. If food's not the problem, what is it actually?
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. And self-inquiry is going to be like your best friend. It's going to be the hardest thing to see, but your best friend in achieving whatever it is that you want.
Yeah. I feel like this is a good place to wrap it up. Anything else spring to your mind before we wrap up this combo?
Just join the fat loss phase. I think feels clean.
Love it.
It just makes sense. No, but for real, we're going into such an incredible time of the year, and what you've created over there is insane. That I'm like its biggest advocate. I'm out here. I really am. And I think, if you've been a long time listener of the podcast and you've been consuming, all of this free value, imagine what would actually happen.
I love
Imagine what would happen. And I think after this episode, you're ready. You're like, okay, got my ass handed to me, but I'm fucking ready.
But I feel like that's cool because you have been you were the first person on the other end when I said, I want to start a program called the Fat Loss Phase. And
so let's do it.
I would say to you, like, I run this program and I fucking hated this, and I run this program, I didn't love this. It needs to have this. It needs to have that. Like, I have... Like when I talk about looking at every round and refining and changing and whatever, you've been the soundboard on the other end of all of that.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah. So you've really watched it come to fruition. And I feel like you've watched me come to a point where I'm just like, the Fat Loss Phase is fucking great.
And it is. And I think that's like, you are such a testament to the Fat Loss Phase. Like you're a complete embodiment of what you teach and what you do. And that's why hundreds of women have moved through it and people have gone through it and gotten incredible results. And it just makes sense that if you're listening, you're one of those hundreds. So I think you should just get in. We have the link in the show notes. For no more information, the sales page is linked below.
This girl gets
you should join.
Where can people find you?
Over on Instagram is just at the Riley May, and then I also have a podcast, the Influential CEO podcast. I don't know if that'll be the vibe, but if you're in business and you want to hear mindset, biz chats, then I'm over there. Just riffing.
No, you do a good riff.
Thanks.
From one riff to another.
Good riffing.
I love it.
The Rubes and Riles riff.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like lots of juicy chat for people to just ponder. And I feel like if you did kind of resonate with those things, but you're like, oh, I'd love to dive deeper into this shit, definitely check out Riles' stuff. I feel like these are the sort of combos and these are the things that you hear a few times and you're kind of like the wheels are turning and then one day you just hear it and go, fuck, that just clicked for me.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I do. Yeah, I'll shamelessly plug.
Yeah,
I will. But my mindset program, Reliant Bounty, is a really incredible one, and I think it just doesn't even matter. It's anything in your life, especially with this conversation today. If you did resonate, it's kind of the fat loss phase. It's my version of the fat loss phase. Like, you just got to get in it.
Yeah, it is.
You just got to be in it.
And for me, it's one of those things where I think I said to you the other day, like, I've listened to it all a few times, and this time it's just landing. And then I feel like you're out in the world going through your life and you're like, reactivity, ego. Like,
I see it everywhere. And you see your own shit so clearly and you're like, wow, I hate this.
And like, people around you, you're almost like, I know too much. I wish I didn't know what I know right now.
It's like everyone's naked and you're like, oh,
I can see your shit.
Isn't it true?
Literally. Yeah. So if you want to dive deeper into the mindset work, definitely check out Riles. But thank you so much for coming in. I think really juicy chat, really beneficial.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll be back next week. God knows what we'll be talking about, but we'll be here.
Bye.